Please.
Yep. So today we are going to jump a little bit deeper into how Bitcoin works and see some more additional details about wallets and its mode of operation. First of all, let's define the three main types of wallets for working with Bitcoin. The first one being the software wallet, the second being the hardware wallet, and the third is centralized storage. So what it means, a software wallet is simply some application on your device. It can be a tablet, phone, computer, laptop, whatever. And the goal and the role of this application is to process keys and transactions. At the same time, it connects to the Bitcoin network through some trusted nodes or centralized services, or can be itself a network node. For example, most mobile wallets cannot be fully fledged nodes because it would take a lot of computing power of your device, and you simply do not need to validate blocks on the go because your battery will drain quickly, and your phone will always be hot, and to validate one block you will probably need an eternity. That's why most mobile wallets, they either have a list of a pre-configured list of trusted nodes. This can be from the protocol developers or from some other trusted organizations, and also they usually allow the way to enter your own node credentials, so you can connect maybe to your own node even if you are running some fully fledged node on the server or on your home computer. Many desktop wallets are often come with the appropriate software which allows the computer to turn into a validator and start participating in achieving the consensus and start validating blocks. Of course, unfortunately, in Bitcoin, in Bitcoin nowadays, today, it is impossible to use a regular computer because the number of users and the number of transactions have grown, so that the difficulty has grown as well. That's why to validate blocks, you need specialized hardware, which is optimized for the operations involving generating random hashes. But you still can have desktop wallet, which connects to some other node and takes information from there. Hardware wallets are, as is clear from the name, are certain devices, but they usually have no additional interfaces. It is some compact device which is connected to a computer or to a laptop, and it works with special software. This is the simplest. It usually has USB interface, and you connect it to your PC, launch the specialized software, and do whatever you want to do. However, some devices, some more advanced hardware wallets have also a screen, a keyboard, a battery, a fingerprint scanner, and modules for wireless communication, which allows it to be an as fully fledged individual device which you use to communicate with the network. The main difference between software and hardware wallets is that if we are speaking about simple primitive hardware wallets, they are usually act as the cold wallets, which means that you plug it into the computer and you use it only when you need to do some transactions. This is considered to be more secure approach because you do not expose your key storage, and hardware wallet is a key storage basically, to the outside world. That's why you do not need to protect it with a firewall. You do not need to protect it with an antivirus software 24/7. You only need this protection when you connect the device to your main computer and do your operations. And all of the rest of the time, you can put it in a safe, hide it somewhere in a safe place, and well, just keep it secure. But also, if you lose the device and you have no backups, then of course you lose all of your funds. in most cases. As for centralized vaults, it is a pretty interesting abstraction on top of the any kind of approach to the wallet, whether software or hardware, because these vaults are often implemented in centralized exchanges. Uh, in this approach, you basically entrust your keys to the service. So you believe that the service will keep them safe and sound. And whenever you want to do some transaction, for example, you want to withdraw the money, or you want to transfer the money to somewhere, or you want to do any other operations, you entrust this vault to act on your behalf. And one of the largest, probably, and the most well-known such storage services is Coinbase. Whenever you use a Bitcoin wallet, regardless of the type, you trust, first of all, those who advise to install a specific wallet, because there are many even software wallets and there are many hardware wallets. So you need to make a decision, and not all of them are equal. Of course, they are equal in their features, they are equal in terms of the protocol that they follow, but they may or may not have some bugs, some imperfections, or some issues which potentially can cause you to lose your keys and your money. So if you have a very flaky friend who is not interested in you being rich and happy, you shouldn't probably listen to their advice on which wallet to choose. Also, you trust that the wallet that you are using is designed and implemented correctly. So this is what we have already mentioned. You need to, even though the wallets are, most of them are open source, you still need to have either some knowledge or some trusted person who can confirm that this wallet is designed and implemented correctly, and that you won't lose your money due to some petty bug that developers have forgot to fix. Also, you trust that your operating system is not hacked, because if your operating system is compromised, there is nothing that can save you. Neither hardware wallet nor the best software wallet, nothing can save you if you have some nasty keylogger, or you have a virus which, for example, makes screenshots of your desktop, or even records the video and sends them this information to hackers, then you are screwed. And you need to ensure that that device which you are using to interact with the network and to manage your private key is secure and not compromised. Also, you need to be sure that the computer software has not been hacked, because even after you install some trusted wallet, a hacker which gains control into your system can substitute it, and you might not even notice it. Also, you trust that your wallet is connected to a trusted Bitcoin node, and it is also a big source of attacks, because let's say, let's keep with the example with the hacker. A hacker can not only substitute the software, but they can also substitute the address of the Bitcoin node which your wallet communicates with, and enter the address and the coordinates, so to say, of their own node, which feeds you fake data, and in turn can compromise how you work with the system. Also, the last but not least is you need to trust that the implementation of the cryptographic library and the specific algorithm do not have hidden vulnerabilities. Many of us know, some people maybe do not know, that SHA-1 algorithm was compromised, and collisions were found in this algorithm. And even though that Bitcoin does not use SHA-1 algorithm anymore, if it was used right now, it could pose a serious threat to all of the users in the system. And if theoretically there exists a group of people who are targeting modern and current cryptography algorithm, then of course we also need to take that into account, and ideally to monitor that our cryptographic algorithms that we are using are still secure, robust, and safe to use on a daily basis. Bitcoin wallets implements several processes. The first is generation of address for receiving coins. The second is displaying balances and transaction history after the payment is sent, and creating a backup of the wallet and the ability to restore the wallet from backup. Many wallets use algorithms that generate mnemonic phrases and allow you to quite easily remember and to recover your wallet, your key pair, based on this mnemonic sequence of words. Bitcoin address is the identifier of the recipient. In order for sender to make a transfer, they need to know the address, basically, where am I sending the coins? Here you have an example of a Bitcoin address. Each of the addresses correspond to a confidential value, which we call a private key. And basically, address is generated from the private key. First, we have the private key, then we generate the public key from it, and then we apply several steps of transformations in order to obtain an address, which will be associated with the coins that are sent to this address. Transaction, in simple words, again, maybe I'm reiterating for someone, but for someone it will be new and a new explanation, which may be which may give some additional context. Is the way we define transaction is a set of digital data that initiates the sending of bitcoins from one address to another, and the user's wallet independently generates and sends transactions. So whenever you want to send transaction, you can imagine it as the paper, as the paper check. We should have it on the next slide, but let's not rush too far. So you have a paper check, you fill it with the information, you put your signature on it, which is important, because otherwise, how would you prove that you are really the initiator of this transaction, and you send it. But in case with the paper checks, you give it to the person in the bank, they look at it and they process this check. But in case with Bitcoin, you send this transaction to the nodes, they look at it, and if everything is correct, then the transaction is executed. And here on the slide, we have a cropped screenshots of some mobile wallet, which demonstrates the QR code of the account address and the the dialog window of sending the transaction. So the amount here is 0.01 Bitcoins. We are sending it to this address and also specifying the transaction priority, basically how many Satoshi, and Satoshi is the smallest accounting unit in Bitcoin, kind of like cent or euro cent or whatever. So how many Satoshis we are willing to pay per byte in our transaction. And then wallet automatically generates the proper structure and sends it into the pool. And then validator nodes take the transactions from the pool, verify them, and put into the block and send it into the system. Here is the example of a mnemonic seed phrase. So this mnemonic phrase was generated with a BIP49 standard, and BIP is Bitcoin Improvement Proposal number 49, which basically described the algorithm for generating this mnemonic. And the reason why these improvement proposals are often specified and why it is important to know the specific proposal is because they can be different, and you cannot just generate, I don't know, random words and say that this will be your mnemonic phrase. This is not the password. This is generated from the private key based on a special algorithm. And if you take one private key and use two different mnemonic phrase generator algorithms, you will get two absolutely different mnemonic phrases. Good healthy habits of treating mnemonic phrases is to have them on paper. Do not never ever store them in cloud, any cloud service, like cloud drives on your computer, in your gallery as the screenshot, because the device is constantly connected to the internet and many of the services eventually get hacked. So write it down on a piece of paper, ideally make a few copies, and put them all in the safe places and remember where you have put them. The life cycle of the transaction consists of creation, when we gather these initial fields and generate the correct structure. Sending, when the wallet software is when it takes this package with the transaction and sends it to the closest node it knows, so that the node can put it into the transaction pool. Verification, which is done by the node to make sure that everything is correct, that this transaction is well, signed by the proper party, that ideally that the address exists and so on. Well, just the basic necessary checks. And if the verification is complete, then the inclusion in a block happens. And here we have the process of validation. So we verify the transaction, but we validate the block. It is important to distinguish these two terms, because block can contain several transactions. And in addition to the content of the transactions themselves, block has also other fields, as you may remember from before. Block has the hash of the previous block. It should be correct and it should exist. And it also has the nonce, which should be also correct, so that the node proves that it successfully completed the proof of work algorithm, and it did the work which it is trying to prove, and also other fragments of the block that need to be validated. And if something is not correct, then the and also transactions in a block must not create coins from the thin air. So the sum of inputs and outputs should be equal. And if you have more bitcoins than you want to pay to the merchant, you need to specify an address to which you will get the change, kind of like the cash exchange. I give you $10 and get $5 back. This is my change, and the same goes for Bitcoin. And if transaction or the block is not correct, then it gets rejected. The body of transaction, in addition to what we have already mentioned, consists of the origin of the coins that are spent. So where are these coins coming from? Because as you remember, they cannot just appear from the thin air. The evidence of coin ownership, which is provided by the sender of the transaction, the address for transfer or terms for spending. So where are we sending these coins, or what needs to happen in order for them to be spent? And Bitcoin has its non-Turing complete language, Bitcoin script, which allows to specify these terms, in addition to simply sending coins to someone. And also, of course, the amount. So how many coins you are sending. Here is the example that I have mentioned with the paper check, and it's titled transaction verification, because imagine you are the a bank employee who gets handed a check from some person, and you need to see that this check is not fake. So you look at the bank name, you look at the number, you look at the sum. Maybe the person is trying to transfer $1 trillion from their account, but they don't have this money. You have the date, for who you are paying, the sum written with words. This is often used so no one can add a few zeros here. So you see, it's also a very primitive, but in a way clever verification approach to prevent the check, the paper check, from being tampered with. Here we have the signature and also some utilitarian values, which maybe only the bank or even the electronic machine knows how to decipher. And this is the process which Bitcoin validator also does. It looks at all of these fields, it looks at all of these parameters to make sure that the transaction is not something non-existent or fraudulent. What are the main stages of transaction verification? So the first is check the condition that the coins that exist in the accounting system are being spent. So again, we circle back to this proof that coins are not created from the thin air. Then check the condition that coins are not spent again, but for the first time. This is called double spending, and it is usually it can be done if the attacker creates an alternative version of the chain, makes someone believe temporarily in this alternative version of the chain, and then this alternative version, a branch as we often call it, or a fork, that this version is discarded. So the person who is the victim of this attack believes that, so look, the coins are in the chain, so here you just wait a bit more and you will get your coins. But eventually this turns out to be a fork and it gets discarded, while in the main chain the attacker, the fraudster, never even made this transaction. So he gets the product, for example, but keeps the money to themselves. And the third stage is verification of proof of ownership of the coins provided by the sender, so the transaction initiator. Here on this third stage, we need to verify that the person who claims to be the owner of these coins is indeed the owner. So what is happening is that they prove that they own the private key. Here again is a pretty schematic, simple representation of the blockchain, but let's look at it a little bit deeper to tie everything together and to understand how do transactions lay into this whole framework of blocks. So we have a chain of transactions in the real world. So here is like the real world level and the blockchain level. Alice wants to send some amount of bitcoins to Bob, and Bob wants to send them to Charlie. What is happening on the chain level? So Alice have never received this coin from the thin air. She have received it from someone. Maybe if she's a validator, she received them from the block creation. But wherever she got them from somewhere. Alice, this is the block where Alice's transactions are included. So Alice got the coins from somewhere, and she is sending. So this is the input of this transaction, and this is the output of this transaction. The output goes to Bob. When Bob wants to receive the coins, he creates a transaction, puts an input of the transaction from Alice. So this output corresponds to this input, and the output to Charlie. Charlie does the same job. She creates input from Bob and creates output to somewhere. If she does not want to send them to anyone else, in the output of the transaction, she specifies one of her own addresses. Thus, she says, I want to get this money from Bob, and I want to put them on this address which I own. So basically keep the money, keep the coins to myself. One more, again, schematic. This one is a little bit funny, a little bit funky, pretty simplistic, but it does a great job at illustrating everything, even maybe overly simplistic, but it does a great job of illustrating the Bitcoin overall and the transaction confirmation process. So this is what is going on inside of the node. We have it here, network node. Here is the validator, the person who is maintaining and managing this node. In the network, we have a lot of transactions. They may or may not include messages, but we still treat them all as messages. These are new messages, which are transactions. So each of the network node has several modules inside of the software for the network node consists of several modules. The first is networking module, which takes transactions from the network, from the pool. It keeps the coin database for ease and simplicity of keeping up with the balances, so you don't need to recalculate the balance every time you need to display it to the user. So networking module basically pulls the transactions from the network and starts to like rearranging them inside of the node. Validator module. Here we have the mempool. Maybe I could make it, or maybe I cannot. Let me try to make it a little bit bigger. No, I cannot do that in Google Slides, can I? No, I cannot. So you will have to take my word that here it says mempool, and mempool is the pool of transactions. So after the networking module gathered new transactions and put them into the mempool, validator starts the process of verification of this transaction. So we have this transaction ID, we have the price, and this validator checks that everything is correct, what we have already discussed before. So it goes through all of this process. And then for transactions that are valid, they go to the miner module of the software. And here it's shown as the part of the specialized rig of the Bitcoin miner hardware. So here it has a blueprint, let's call it the blueprint of a new block, which has the header and the transaction list. The header is the connection to the previous block in the chain, and the transaction list is whatever the node decides to put inside of the block. For example, the ones with the biggest price, or as it is usually done. And another thing that we have here is a list, a small or even not so small list of Bitcoin protocol rules. These rules basically govern the how nodes should behave. For example, what is the minimal amount of the fee? What is the what is the structure of transaction, what is the maximum size of a certain field, what is the size of the address field, what is the how many characters are allowed in the additional the field with the transaction note, and so on and so on. So this is kind of like playing the border guard. So you have this list of rules, and you look at the block and you compare them to see, or sorry, you look at the transaction and you compare whether everything is correct. The fees, we have already mentioned fees a few times, but never really got into them in more detail. So each transaction pays a fee per unit of its weight, and the weight is how much data are we including into this transaction. The maximum base block size is 1 megabyte. Validators sort transactions in descending order, usually of record price. So the highest price will be on the top, and the lowest price will be at the bottom. Transactions with a low data entry cost may remain unconfirmed for a long time or forever. So if you are trying to cheat and save some satoshis on the fee prices, it may happen that your transaction will never even be included or picked up by the node and verified and validated, sorry. Now, what happens when we have conflicting transactions? So let's say we have a situation when Peter transferred 5 coins to Alex, who is not me, in one transaction, and sent the same 5 coins to Leonid in another transaction. So here we have a situation of double spending. Peter has only 5 coins, but he is trying to send them to 2 different people. Of course, both transactions cannot be in one version of the story, or speaking more technically, they cannot be in one blockchain, because they are conflicting. Peter is trying to create coins from the thin air. Transaction that was previously distributed across the network, or the one that pays a larger fee, will be more likely to confirmed. So whichever transaction is picked up first will be the one and only true, and the second will be rejected. So let's say in transaction to Alex, he specified 30 satoshis per byte, and here he specified, I don't know, 10 satoshis per byte. So this will be higher in the mempool, and validators will be more likely to pick this transaction from the mempool and to process it and to include in the block. And then the next time validator encounters the second transaction where he sends 5 coins to Leonid, the node will simply reject, because the coins are already spent and they cannot be spent another one more time. So this was it. A little bit, we were pretty quick today, but the good news is it means that we have more than enough time for your questions. So please, let's see, what do we have in the chat? We have only hellos. So, well, just go on with your questions and let's answer them.
While you are preparing your question, I will note, of course, in the next lectures, we will talk in more detail about transaction fees, I don't know, features, etc., etc. Please, your question.
Alexei, can I ask you?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I have one question regarding this validator's work. I call it. I'm very far away from this story. That's I want to understand. Is it manually work fully? Is it, for example, validator sit with the computer and look through all transaction and compare the addresses of wallets and compare with the rules by hand, or some software exists for this task, or how it really work in general? Thank you.
Yes, I see where your question comes from, because during this presentation and on the slides, we always have these depictions of someone looking at the transactions, these tables, lists, and it may seem that this is a manual job, but in reality, all parts of the process are automated, and they rely on things that are how to say, that are easy to check automatically. For example, the hash can be calculated automatically by the node, and it can be compared almost, I don't know, in milliseconds. So everything what the node needs to do is written in the software. So the operator of the node, the person, actually the real person who maintains the hardware and the software, does not need to do any of the manual work. Everything is set by the protocol and implemented in the software. The only manual thing they need to do is to do the maintenance, basically to make sure that the power supply is on, that the cooling is working, and that this, physical things, that the hardware is working. But all of the validations, verifications, and checks are done automatically. And this is, I think, one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin and about all of these systems, is that they are almost autonomous and can work without people.
Great story. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hi.
See question
Maybe
about the classroom. Yeah, but it was answered. So please, any more questions?
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Ruslan. So yeah, Alexei, I was just wondering about the transactions when it basically summarize all money movements, and it's create a transaction from all these movements. If in this time comes another new transaction from some from one guy to another, so is it and this transaction, last transaction, has more money fees, so it's more it's from the money perspective, it's a good thing to include this new transaction in the new block. So is it somehow managed to kick out the old some old transaction, or let's say it gets 10 or 20 transactions, and till it processes them, it never gets some new ones.
Okay, just to clarify that I got your question right, are these two transactions conflicting? So are they trying to spend the same coins, or they are different?
No, just different, but let's say I already processed some transactions, and I going to include all them in the block, but as the new transactions happened, and it's more I'm sure more. So if it was earlier, I'd put this transaction in the block. But I already checked all these things, and So is this transaction going to be waiting for the new block, or any time till the new block created, transaction could be put it in this block?
Okay, I see. So let's try to maybe unpack this whole situation a little bit and process it step by step. This is a very good question because it presents almost a corner case of how should the node behave. So let's say the node has already included a transaction in the block and starts proposing this block to the network. But while it tries to propose, that transaction which renders this transaction irrelevant happens, gets added to the block, and this block is added to the blockchain. This will mean that the block that the node was trying to push into the network becomes invalid, it's obsolete. That's why the node dissolves the block and all of the transactions go back into the mempool. So the node will maybe pull the first transaction again, and for the new state of the blockchain, it will be invalid. I don't know, for some reason. Let's say the sender has not enough money. He spent the money on that transaction that was added earlier than the initial one. So this transaction will become invalid in the new state of the blockchain, and it will be simply rejected because it it cannot be executed in this current state of the blockchain. I hope I got your question right and my explanation was sufficient for you.
Yeah, thank you. So one node can propose only one block in one, like in time. Yeah, it can't be that it could propose several blocks for the blockchain.
I mean, well, if you the software is up to the some details of the software is up to the node operator. So in theory, it can be proposed in several blocks in one turn, but there's there's not much incentive for doing that because it's not increasing your chances or anything. You still need to do this proof of work in order to add any of your blocks. So it's not like it will improve your chances of a block being added or whatever else.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it answers my question. Thank you, Alexander.
Yep, great. Okay, and I see Igor Zhukov had his hand raised for quite a while, so please, Igor, go with your question.
What is the amount of transaction which should be included in block in Bitcoin? And is it mandatory number, or it can be some range of transactions in one block?
You mean the number of transactions in the block?
Yes.
There is a limit, but the limit is in the block size. So the rules of the protocol, we had it, I don't remember by heart, but I believe we had 1 megabyte. So maximum block size is 1 megabyte, but transactions can have different sizes. So they do not always have fixed size. And that's why the block has as many transactions as the validator was able to fit into the block. But there is a range, basically, yes.
And can it be, for example, half of megabyte? Or it's always next to 1 megabyte, but not more?
Yes, I think, well, of course, it's best to see it in the real network, but it is the arbitrary number. So it's not like the minimum is 0.5 and the maximum is 1. There, in corner case, there can be even one transaction in the block if we have no transactions at the moment. Like at the beginning of when Bitcoin just launched, there wasn't too many transactions, and basically there were a group of friends or maybe a group of early adopters who were playing around, and they had, I don't know, just very few transactions. So the blocks weren't even nearly 1 megabyte in size.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. And 5Dan, please, what's on your mind?
I have a question about, so there are nodes that calculating all these transactions. And for example, one node is in Russia, one node is in Brazil somewhere, and they trying to make a block with different transactions. But blockchain is not a branch, it's a chain. So when one of the nodes completes a block and pushes it into blockchain, then all other nodes on the planet should somehow recalculate their blocks because they need to include that block in hashes or something like that. How all this parallel computing works?
Yes, I see the nature of your question. Thank you for a very interesting question. As you may remember from the previous lecture with me, we very briefly mentioned that consensus algorithms like proof of work, proof of stake, and others operate in an environment where the total number of participants is unknown. So that's why the same goes for Bitcoin. Me as the node in the Bitcoin network, I do not know everyone who is in the same network. I only keep the list of several nearest neighbors, maybe neighbors by IP range or by geographical location. So the time, not the timeout, but the geographical location is closer, so the ping is smaller, so to say, using the online gaming lingo. But I know only this group of nodes, and whenever I add the new block, I share it with them, and they share it with their again neighbors, and it goes across the network like a wave. So you drop a rock in the ocean and you have these waves which go apart from the rock. The same goes for Bitcoin network, and there may be a situation when conflicts happen, and that's why in the node software they have the conflict resolution algorithms. For example, if your block was added before mine, I have to accept your source of truth. For example, I have a node with a very bad connection. I always lag behind, and even if I create some blocks, I lag behind. So my blocks are I have shorter chain than all of the rest, than the main network. And that's why by the rules of the protocol, I will be forced to accept this single source of truth from my neighbors who have presented me with the longer chain. So I hope this answers your question.
So let me clarify. If I receive new block while I'm calculating block, I need to restart all of this because I need to include it in transaction hashes.
Yes, because the block that you have just created will become invalid. So it may contain transactions that are invalid considering the new version of the chain, and that's why you need to adopt the new version of the chain and then try again. Basically, in theory, and when we talk about it like that, it sounds really stupid, and I get that. It's like, imagine I come up with a number, and we have 10 people standing in a circle and just shouting random numbers until some of them guesses the number. So the winner at this round is only one. That's why in Bitcoin, the winner for each round is always only one. Everyone works, everyone calculates hashes, but only one validator wins the right to add the block into the blockchain. And regardless of how stupid it sounds and how stupid it looks on paper, in reality, since the process is very fast, I mean the data exchange process, validation process, and the block addition process, not the proof of work calculation. So everything is very fast, so it happens near instantaneously, and that's why it's not as cumbersome and as tedious as it may sound when explained in the using words and on paper.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, and we have another from Bogdan Lyshenko, please.
Yeah, just one small question about the validators. So basically, their weightness it depends on how much coins or how much currency they have on their accounts. Is it true, or in blockchain in this work in other way?
So you mean how many coins validators have on their accounts?
No, I mean like I know that in Ethereum, for example, validators have more weightness. Yeah, like if you have more Ethereum on your account, you have more weightness as a validator. So basically, is it work for the rest of blockchain systems, or not really?
Yeah, I see your question. So what you are referring to is proof of stake consensus algorithms. They are based and of course they can be as simple or as complicated as humanly possible, but proof of stake, any algorithm from the proof of stake family, relies on the number of coins that the network participant is willing to lock as his, well, stake in the process. So I am putting 1 Ethereum in voting, which means that my voting power is roughly 1 Ethereum. Well, we are talking about very simple case here. You stake 2 Ethereum, so your voting power is 2 Ethereum. That's why you will be chosen as the next block validator. I mean, as the validator who adds blocks more often than I do. But this can lead to an abuse of monetary power. That's why many modern proof of stake algorithms are more sophisticated than that, and they use some ratios, they use circling of validators. So even if you have, I don't know, 100 Ethereum, you will not be the only one adding blocks and so on. But basically what you are referring to is proof of stake. But Bitcoin, on the other hand, works on proof of work consensus algorithm, which means that monetary factors are not considered, and all of the nodes are doing the same thing, generating random hashes, and the voting power, so to say, is how much computing power you have, not the monetary, but computing power.
Okay, now it's clear. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And yes, Alexei Borovsky, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to return to 5Dan's question about servers in, let's say, Russia and Brazil. to what you said about the block that has the earliest date stamp. It's totally makes sense. But then you said about the server with bad connection, and so to double check, if I have a server and I mined a block earlier than anyone, but I have a bad connection. So is it possible that my block won't be accepted as a next block?
Absolutely, and this is one of the core rules of the blockchain. So first of all, very small correction. Timestamps are not really considered because I may be in Japan, you may be in United States. So what considered is the block height, and block height is how many blocks are in the current chain. So coming back to the example with a computer with a very bad connection, let's say you have generated the block and your block height is, I don't know, 101. So in your chain, you have 101 block, the one being your new block. Then you receive the chain with 110 blocks. It's longer than yours. And what happens is that your chains have diverged. So you have two branches, one with one block which you have created, and another one with 10 blocks. So 110, like it's the place where your chains the diverge, and the longer chain always wins. So you may have very fast very big calculation power, but if you cannot get your blocks, and by the moment you send your 110th block, you receive 120 blocks, you have to accept 120 because it is the rule.
Okay, thank you. And this is possible that in USA and in Japan, we have 110 blocks high, and we generated the next block, and then this like wave comes up from one side and from another. And what happens when they met?
So you mean like what happens when two so
yes, they have the same
when we
height.
have two forks at
Yeah,
the same height. Yes.
So you need to choose somehow, but how?
So it creates a fork in the chain, and I don't really remember the full explanation of this edge case. So it is like a separate edge case, which is which can happen. But honestly, I don't really remember the course of actions because it's very, very rare that such things happen, and usually there's even if we both have two forks at the same height, one of them will grow faster. In most cases, one of them will grow faster, and eventually the smaller chain will have to be omitted, or they can start their own chain, keep on going with these conflicting blocks, and have a totally different network as it happened with the Bitcoin forks. But it is a totally different story. So basically, in simple words, without getting too deep into this, into the full explanation of this specific case, is that usually one of these conflicting branches start growing faster, so others have to adopt it as well.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, there is a way to decide which one is like.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. And one more question from Igor.
Let's imagine you and me are validators, and we calculate new block. For example, on your side you have 100 blocks, and on my side I have 100 blocks. And when you calculate new block, what specifically you receive to me? Is it only one new block you calculated, or it's 101 blockchain? It's interesting for me. We have blockchains here. You have blockchain, and I have the same blockchain. And when some of us calculate new block, what specifically transmitted to me? What I get? Just new block you calculated, or whole chain? And I substitute my chain with your this chain you provided to me.
Well, so if you are new to the network, then you have to download all of the chain. And as for now, let me even check. This is pretty interesting. How big is the Bitcoin blockchain now? I think it's like hundreds of gigabytes, I believe. Yeah, so right now it's 450 gigabytes. And as the new node, you will have to download all of that. But whenever you are already a node and you are at the same height of the chain, you need only the difference. So if you, let's say you turned off your computer overnight, you wake up, you turn it on again, and you see that your chain is shorter. I don't know, you lack 50 blocks. You need to catch up on 50 blocks. That's why you ask your neighboring validator for 50 blocks, not the whole chain. It would be extremely inefficient.
I see. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question, and also very small addition. I see we are out of time, but just small context for this thing is the nature of the blockchain allows you to check for yourself whether this block fits into the common version of the chain or not. Because if someone is trying to feed you a new block, but the previous hash, the previous block field is not the same as yours, then you will know that this block does not belong to you. So they are trying to point you to some different chain, and thus this block is invalid. But if I, as the good validator, send you truly the latest block, it will have the previous hash the same as you have now your latest block. So you will be able to easily recalculate that. Yep. So thank you all. We have quite a lovely discussion, lovely and lively discussion today. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. So we are out of time, but if you have maybe just 1-2 questions that you really want to know, and we finish.
That's great. Thank you for a chance. Actually, thanks for the lecture. And I wanted to ask, is blockchain compressed or it just goes uncompressed? You said it's many gigabytes status of now, right? And how it works? Are there any clients that compress it from the actually client's side? I know it's a trade-off between speed and size, but not any machine can handle such size.
Honestly, maybe some wallets do that, but it's not really well, it's convenient for you as the operator, but it can be problematic for the network. But I don't think that it is enforced by the protocol. So once you have something on your node, you can, in theory, you can compress it. And another thing which I have totally forgot to mention is that there is such a concept as checkpoints. So in order to avoid copying all of the blocks straight from the Genesis block, new nodes can start at some checkpoint, and the checkpoint is it is supported in.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Alexei,
sorry.
I can answer the question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Here is nothing about checkpoints. Checkpoints is truly another mechanism. So blockchain is not compressed. Everything is plain text and uncompressed, because almost all data that's stored in the block are pretty like pseudo-random. So you have a lot of hashes, hash values. You have a lot of signatures, and again you have a lot of hash values that link one transaction to another, one transaction to another, one block to another block. So only data that you can theoretically compress is amounts of sending and receiving and of sending coins. But that is a very small percent of the all data in the full blockchain. So you just doesn't have any sense to compress or start compress. Even the Bitcoin protocol doesn't maintain any compression and uncompression algorithms.
Got it. Thank you. It's clear now.
Yeah, thank you,
Guys,
Bogdan,
could
for
I ask
hopping on that
only
one.
one question, because it's related to our discussion, please. So blockchain tends to infinity. Yeah, blockchain size tends to infinity, because it will be more and more blocks. Is it problem for now? Or will it become problem when we have, I don't know, double more user, triple more user, or more?
Okay, I can answer also that question. Yes, we are moving to the infinity in the size of the blockchain, but it's not problem, because some very old transaction that are already spent out of the money then that they one time received. So the money from the transaction are spent. And the data of that transaction doesn't make any sense. So you can just remove, but in the chain of blocks, there will be still some data that you can verify integrity of the full chain. So some data you can remove because it doesn't will use more. It will ridiculously, not ridiculously, but very impressive doing to make the whole blockchain much more smaller. So that is not problem. And also we know that computers are growing in their capacities, their power, computational power, sort of, and so on. So that is not problem. The main goal to not allow the blockchain growth too fast that it is for now. So the users can catch up with a slightly powerful computer, slightly more capacity for hard drive, and so on. And if that's not enough, you can remove some become useless data from the old blocks.
But how can we remove block or data from blockchain, and this blockchain is still, and we still check integrity, and we can still check integrity?
I mean that all of block headers have a hash value of all transactions. So you can remove some transaction but the hash value of including that remover transaction still in block header, and you can verify integrity. And there is no problem removing very old and useless data, because no one will try to already spend money, and only a few nodes in the network do some processes. So I guess 95% of all nodes store the full copy, and this is not problem for them.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bogdan. On the NIC Academy, Bogdan is cryptographer and blockchain researcher at Distributed Lab. And he will speaker in the next lecture in the future. Okay. So all questions have answered. We are very pleased that there is a discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you to all. And so wait for material from us and new task. See you soon, maybe.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you, Alexei. See you guys. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.